Straw Hut Media.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Hi, everybody. Today on Better Together, we have a show that you must listen to.
We're tackling a topic that is incredibly relevant right now as we all go back into the world. We're talking today about social anxiety. And the beauty of this episode is we don't just talk about it. She tells us concrete tips for how we can tackle it, alleviate it, and get back out into the world without feeling anxious.
And if it's not our own, we can help others. So listen to our conversation coming up with Dr. E. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Better Together. Better with Dr. E is our show today, and we are so happy to have you back. How are you, Dr. E?
I am well, and I'm grateful to be here. So thank you.
I had a question this week, and I've been. Of course, you create conversation amongst my friends. You make me a better person. I think about the ways that you guide us toward health and happiness, and it has become a practice in my day to think about this, the green and the red, to keep myself in calm, to understand how to communicate. The betterment of what you give is so amazing, and it occurred to me that when you give mental health to others and you offer all of these things, does anybody ever help you? Do you ever, you're seen as a therapist, you're seen as a doctor. Does everyone just assume like you're the healthiest person in the world? Do you ever, are you ever allowed a down day?
Well, I am human, so I am allowed a down day. I have my own coach because I think everyone benefits from working with a coach for sure. And then, my friends don't think of me as Dr. E. My friends think of me as Elizabeth. So they don't really, I don't even think some of them even know half of what I do. So my life is pretty normal when I'm off screen.
They better not listen to this show or they're going to be asking you for advice.
I think it's important for everyone to realize that even people who are happy, even people who, teach this and full-heartedly believe it with every cell in their body, like myself, we're still human.
Yes.
And so there are still times that I get into the red zone. Hopefully I apply what I preach during and cover my mouth. And there have been times when I'm literally covering my mouth, especially with one of my teenagers. Sometimes I'm not that great. And so things come out, but then I know what to do and I know to process it and take full accountability. That was me in the red zone.
Yes.
That's not who I want to be, how I want to act. And let's talk about how we can move forward. So,
that is one of the things that I do want you to get into our topic, but I think that's one of the things that I, of course, wanted to hear from you too, because when our children are looking at us, I know I talked a little bit about my son last time and what we go through when we're talking about taking responsibility. It's not that, and here Heather and I are going, oh, we teach better together and let's have better health. And we believe love and happiness is our science. But then sometimes I get pissed off. And sometimes I'm not, and I go into a place that doesn't feel good. And I will share with you that happened with my son this week. And because I told them that I was willing to take responsibility and that sometimes I make those mistakes too, my 12-year-old son, Atlas, was able to say to me the other night, well, Mom, what confuses us is when you get upset and you go into your room and you close the door, and that locks us off from us. We start thinking that we did all of these things wrong. Now, in my opinion, I'm extricating myself from a situation with my kids so that I can go in and calm down and not offend them. And I want to get it back into my green zone. And yet even doing that activity was harming them in some way. And yet, because we were talking in the green zone, I was able to take in that information and go, oh my God, what I'm doing to keep you safe is actually communicating the opposite. And he was able to go, yeah, because we don't want you to close the door because that makes us feel like we're outsiders and then we don't know how to come to you. So because we were communicating, my son was able to talk to me about how I could love him more when we're going through the difficult times of not being able to communicate. So I just want to, even that, and I know we have a lot of moms who are listening to this with their kids, and it's that responsibility that allows this communication. And that was even with my 12-year-old, that we're benefiting from all of this, and so are they. And of course, we're all awkward in learning this, and we are all making mistakes. And I think that's what our topic is about today a little bit. Heather, do you want to bring us into our show?
Well, I don't know if it's about making mistakes.
No. The awkwardness, the things, the growth,
yes,
the
awkwardness,
things that we don't know about ourselves.
My first function out of COVID was actually a funeral, and there was a lot of people there and a lot of people that I don't know. And I actually am somebody who does not suffer from social anxiety. But even me in that situation was like, wait, I forgot how to do this. And so it's been coming up a lot more. I have friends whose kids have anxiety about going back to school. I have, I've heard even Homer, your son, was telling us that some of his friends are having social anxiety. So we thought that would be the topic that we tackle today and that you could help us and our listeners.
Well, can we begin? Would you mind, Dr. Reed, beginning us with what social anxiety is, or at least a place where we can all understand that this is what we're talking about and we're coming into it?
Yeah, so social anxiety is it's a persistent fear of a social situation or performance where the person is exposed to unfamiliar people or the possibility of scrutiny by others, i.e. they are in a social situation or they are speaking, for example, on stage, and their concern is either I don't know this person, so I don't know how they're going to react to me. I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And they're concerned that they are going to be judged by the other people. Really, who's judging them? Themselves, but we'll get to that.
Okay, right.
And so it's very common. Before the pandemic, the stats were about 15 million people, 15 million adults, I would say, suffer from social anxiety.
15.
15.
Okay.
15.
I was going to say, what?
15 million in the United States.
Adults in the United States
are suffering from social anxiety. Wow. And that was before the pandemic.
That statistic was before the pandemic. I'm going to guess it's higher now.
Right. Well, when we talk about it, so I think sometimes people feel like social anxiety, and I will admit this myself. Sometimes we don't recognize what it is that we see, and I'm just going to lay it on out there. I started watching a dating show called Dating on the Spectrum, and we're looking at things, and this is also I would like for you to kind of show us the extremes of what we're going through, because I have to say I'm looking at people on the spectrum of social anxiety, because I will look at some of that and I will admit 100%. I relate more sometimes watching the people and how they are interacting with each other and themselves on the Dating on the Spectrum than I do if I watch any other dating show with people who are supposedly normal. So what is going on?
Yeah, so in terms of social anxiety in the spectrum, it could be just a little anxiety thinking, ooh, I hope I don't say the wrong thing. I hope the conversation isn't awkward. Maybe they're thinking, something negative about me. So it could be something, just kind of that little voice inside of your head, all the way to the extreme would be just avoidance. Not going out of your home, not interacting socially, and just avoiding any kind of social situation. Or what I used to see a lot was people, particularly when I work with executives, that fear of public speaking, which is also social anxiety.
Right.
So even though their job called for to be, to speak on stage in front of their team or their company, even the thought of that 2 months in advance would cause them panic.
Well, I think that's part of what I'm finding and talking to friends is it's the anxiety leading up to an event too. Like, so there can be two ways to look at it. Some people have just anxiety leading up to something and they just torture themselves leading up to it. And then I had another friend who talked about how he went to a party and was kind of blindsided by his anxiety once he got there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two, and the leading up to it part are the kids who don't want to go back to in-person school, because there was a lot of kids who kind of thrived in that.
And they found their safety. Like, oh my God, I don't have to interact with this. I'm behind a computer, and now somebody's telling me I have to go back.
So where do we start with this? Where do we dig into this to be helpful to the people listening? So I guess we break it up into parents, right, and their kids.
Yeah, or even I like that notion of the anticipatory anxiety, that I'm thinking about it. And again, that's the power of our mind. Our mind can work us into this almost state of panic just by what we're saying to ourselves. So we want to address the anticipatory aspect of this. That's one thing. And then if you are blindsided, or if you find that you're feeling anxious when you're in a social situation, when you're at school, when you're even at a funeral, right, or a party, what can you do then?
Right. So like so what would one do leading up to an event that they're nervous about? What are the tactics that they can employ to make themselves calm down?
Yeah. So I'd say the first thing is, remember, it's a theme and you're going to hear me say it over and over again, but get out of the red zone, right? Because when we're in the red zone, we're going to focus more on what's wrong. We're going to use what we call catastrophic thinking, which is a really big word, meaning it's going to be awful and unbearable and I'm going to totally mess up. I'm going to get fired. They're going to laugh at me. No one's going to like me. No one's going to talk to me, making things even worse, right? And then when that happens in our mind, when we're in the red zone, we feel more anxiety, we think more negatively, and it becomes this downward spiral. So take the steps to get out of the red zone. As we may recall, that could be something like watching a funny video. It could be going for a walk. It could be talking to a friend, but something to get you out of that high level of distress. And then come armed. And what do I mean by that? That means have certain topics that you know that you can talk about.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because when you have that, then you don't have to, when we get stressed, our ability to think goes from, can think of all different aspects to just focusing on what's wrong. And so if you're armed with certain topics, certain questions you could ask, whether it's about how they dealt with the pandemic, or have they actually been to the movie theater yet? Or it's summer. What
right.
did you
The
do
pandemic offers a lot of conversation topics, really, if you think about it.
Absolutely. And remember, most people are so happy to talk about themselves that if you give them a question, a lot of times they're going to keep going. And so that's going to be helpful. The other way to be armed in these situations is to bring a friend, a confidant. So if you are going to a party, or for example, if you're going back to school, if you have a friend, someone with whom you do feel comfortable, maybe you're not with them all the time during the day or at the party, but you know that you can go back to them. So as a student, for example, you might be able to see them at lunch. You might see them in math class. If you're at a party, you might see them, have a conversation with them, go off on your own, then come back. But you know that someone is there with who you feel comfortable with. And so having that confidant will be really helpful too.
When I was early on in my career, I used to have to go to convention type events where I did not know anybody. And I read in an article somewhere, and I found it to be very helpful, and I employed it a lot, and I've told it to a lot of people, that when you're in a setting like that you don't know anybody, look around. There's probably one person standing alone by the bar, or standing, alone somewhere. Go up to that person and strike up a conversation, because they will be so grateful. They're in the same situation as you are, but it's
rescue each other.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that to me was helpful throughout the years when I was a little bit intimidated by those kinds of situations.
Yeah. And it's such a great point, because here's the thing. The majority of people are feeling at least somewhat anxious going back into these social situations. And whether they're voicing it, whether it's obvious because they're off by themselves, regardless. But if you were the person who goes up, if you were the person who strikes up the conversation, not only is it going to help you feel better because you're having a conversation, because you're helping out others, and we know that when we help out others, we feel better, but it's also going to really be helpful to them. They're going to view you in a different light, which is going to be even more positive in terms of your interactions.
Now, we had talked a little bit before we started this of how this is the opposite of FOMO, and you have a name for what we're talking about. Do we all know what FOMO is?
No, again, a definition needs to be presented.
Fear of missing out. So there's a lot of people who, when they hear about somebody else doing something, or it just
drives them crazy. They weren't invited. Yes. Oh my God, why are they doing that without me?
They're having fun and I'm not there.
Oh my God, and they didn't ask me, so there's something wrong with me.
So Dr.
Or how can I get there?
That's one of the reasons why social media can be painful for a lot of people, because they'll see people going out. Why wasn't I invited? That kind of thing. So that's FOMO. But now what's really happening is FOGO, which is fear of going out.
Oh my God.
So we've kind of gone to the opposite side, where people are no longer saying, I have to be there. They're saying, I don't even want to go there.
Yes.
And yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Because delineating between, there are people, and it happens the older we get, that just don't want to go out. I have a very, very dear friend who I cannot get him out.
Yes.
Like and I don't think it's anxiety. I could be wrong, but he just does not want to go out. And I every once in a while I have to employ the card that gets him out, which is making him feel bad.
What that you?
All I say is, no, it's fine if you don't want to go. I'm just really disappointed.
Good. There's a layer of judgment that we like when somebody's disappointed at us for not doing what they want.
I do it every 5 years.
Oh, well, every 5 years is okay.
He had a blast.
And he had a blast.
I took him out with Derek and some other friends.
And boy. Okay. Derek's always a blast.
He had a blast. He needed to go out. So there is those people that need to get out every once in a while. You can't just stay home all the time.
You need some friendship encouragement. I don't know if I would go out as much if it weren't for you. I mean, we do benefit each other by pushing the fun button, allowing the fun button to be something that we're leading with. And I think sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to remember that we're allowed to have fun, especially when the world is in chaos or people are talking about the struggles, to allow ourselves. But can we talk for a minute about compartmentalization, Dr. E, where there are all of these different things and everybody's going through their own repercussions of what the pandemic has left them with. When we feel guilty if we're having a good time, am I allowed to because my friend is going through that? Even myself, am I allowed to feel something good when I feel like, maybe my finances are out of order this week? How do we compartmentalize so that we're still allowed to have a good time with ourselves, and can we forgive ourselves for not being perfect in all of the areas?
Well, I hope we can forgive yourself for not being perfect in all areas. I wrote a book called Better Than Perfect, and we can certainly talk about that because perfectionism is something that unfortunately I've had a near and dear relationship with throughout a good part of my life.
Well, could you please tell us about that? Yeah.
So I think that's a really great question, especially with everything that's going on different levels. It's important that you have fun. It's important that you enjoy life. I mean, I've shared with you, my husband, is downstairs on a ventilator 5 years now, struggling, declining. It's horrible. And I still am overall happy and I still can enjoy life. And part of it is because that's what I think is very important to do. But the other part of it is he doesn't want me to be sitting around crying all the time with him. He wants me to be going out and enjoying life. And I think if you think about it, with the people who are struggling, they're struggling, but you staying home and feeling sad for them isn't helping them. And energetically, the higher energy that we have on this planet, the more we're helping out others. We know from the research that there's 2 degrees of separation for happiness. So when you are happier, the people around you are happier. But there's another degree of separation. Their friends are also happier.
Yes.
So as you are doing things to elevate your energy, to be happier, to be in a state of gratitude, to enjoy life more, you're also helping other people do the same thing.
Yeah, it's like ripple and triple effect. It becomes contagious.
So to get specific about social anxiety, let's say there's a parent with a child who just does not want to go back to in-classroom learning.
Yeah.
And it's gearing up. They start school in a week and every day it's a thing, next week you're going back. And what is the best way for that parent to tackle that and make the child feel a little more or a little less anxious about it?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, start to establish routines. So part of going back to school is, the tests and the social interactions. But another part is they aren't sleeping until noon anymore and they got to go to bed. And so start those routines now, regardless of when they're going back. So get those routines going. 2, to help take some of the pressure off with the academic part, you may want to help them start to review some things. A lot of schools will have classes, or you can get online and just kind of review some of the stuff like the math, so that when you go into class on the first day, you aren't thinking, I not only feel completely anxious socially, but I literally have no idea what the teacher's talking about. Okay. So really kind of give them those tools. And then another thing to consider is, what kinds of social interactions is your child having now? So if they haven't seen anyone all summer and then they're going to be thrown into school, that's going to be a significant contrast. So start to have them interact with other kids. If you want to, even playing outside, spending some time together so that they start to get used to that again. This is really a matter of that notion of if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And we know that, for example, when it comes to muscle mass, right? If you stop lifting, your muscles don't stay like that, right? That you're going to lose it. It's the same thing when it comes to our skills of social interactions. And the more we do it, the more our children do it, the easier it will get. But really preparing them to enter back into the school in those ways is going to be really helpful.
Well, what is it a good or a bad idea to, let's say for an older child that because I know there's some high school age kids that are concerned about going back. It's hard to get to the bottom of that if they're concerned about going back or if they're just like, this is easier. but should you talk to them and break down, like, what is it that's giving you anxiety about going back? Like, what are the things, and then talk through them?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing, anxiety is a high level thing. What causes it is going to be different in each person. So in order to really understand how to best help your child or yourself, look at what are you saying to yourself? Remember, you stick that proverbial microphone in your brain. What are you saying to yourself that's causing this anxiety? It may be academically related. Oh my gosh, I literally cheated all last year, so I didn't learn anything. And so I'm concerned about how I'm going to do in school. It may be I haven't talked to anyone. It may be a specific person. I've been able to avoid my ex this entire year, and that's been good. So looking at specifically what the issue is, and then you can give yourself or your child the tools of how to move forward with that.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because everybody is so dependent on social media, right? And we've all gone into that way of communicating through texts. And now in the world of COVID, that was like our entire thing. So like for me, when I went to that funeral and I wasn't around, good friends that the conversation was easy. When I was around people that I had to kind of work a little bit harder at communicating to, it was an incredibly awkward moment for me. And what I decided to do was to own it and say, I am rusty at this, to somebody I was having a conversation with, say like, I don't remember how to do this anymore. And they laughed. My social skills and said, I'm so glad you said that, because I'm actually feeling the exact same thing. So there is that way to diffuse it, I guess. I always say that, if you're nervous about something, if you're about to publicly speak or whatever, to just own it for a second, and then all of a sudden you're not, right?
Well, not necessarily, but somebody did give me a tip yesterday, and I'll take this too. Like, listen, Ann, if you're ever really super uncomfortable with somebody that's standing in front of you and you're so nervous and you don't know what you're going to say, just picture them in a diaper.
That's that old advice. Picture them naked.
Picture them naked. Just so like your whole like, I'm a baby too. I mean, I wonder if some of the other skills, and as we try to bring and merge our things together, one of the things that you've deposited as a real healer for anything that will help you move through it is to exercise. And I'm wondering if this is a way that where our children get, and it's not even children, adults, we get trapped in a feeling, and the feeling can't come out unless it's released somehow. And I practiced that this week, so I want to know if these things are related, or if I'm just bringing in another topic that's outside the realm.
Absolutely. Exercise is always a great thing. I mean, I call it non-pharmacological Xanax, right? Xanax being an anti-anxiety medication. Exercise is great. And particularly for kids who have been home, maybe they haven't been, moving a whole lot. That's a great thing to do. Even a quick walk before going to school, or if you're going back to the office, a quick walk. It doesn't have to be a half an hour jog. It doesn't have to be you wake up an hour early and do yoga, but even just a quick walk around the block, taking the dog out for the walk, that kind of thing, that's going to really help you. It's also helpful during the day. So if you notice your anxiety starting to creep up, if you're at the office, if you're at school, can you do a quick walk around the hallway? If not, can you at least go to the bathroom that's farther away, or the water
right.
fountain, or whatever they call it, that's farther away. So you have just a couple more steps. That's going to help you too.
Wow.
And then,
So let's review. If you have something coming up that you're having anxiety for, you gave us several tips to come armed with topics to talk about, to bring a friend, to maybe talk through what some of your fears are and work them out that way. I had suggested find that person standing alone and strike up a conversation with them. So those are all things that you can do leading up to an event. What can we do if we're actually at an event? Because I had a friend who said he went to an event, he walked in and he realized his heart was pounding. He started sweating. He had to go to the bathroom and like splash water on his face to just calm himself because he realized he was having massive social anxiety. So what do you do when you're in that moment to help yourself?
Consider what I call hot tub syndrome.
Okay.
Hot tub syndrome. So this is hot tub syndrome. Have you ever put your foot in a hot tub and it was so hot you had to take it out?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. But you put it in and out and you kind of dipped it in and out and out and eventually it felt good. Right.
Yes.
And you did that with other parts of your body so that eventually you are neck deep in this warm tub and it feels great. Right. That's hot tub syndrome. What first is awkward, the more you expose yourself to it, the more you acclimate to it. So when you're going through this, remind yourself of hot tub syndrome. This is awkward and uncomfortable. Acknowledge that. I feel really uncomfortable right now. I feel really stressed right now. Acknowledge it, but also remind yourself that the more you go through it, the more comfortable it will be. And very soon, it will be completely normal to you again.
Wow.
So
that's
that
great.
so
That's
so that looks
Take it
like
slow
that
roll.
looks like what? You walk into a party and you kind of go and get yourself a drink before you join the party, or you use the restroom, or you do something. Is that what you mean? Do something to slowly ease in?
Well, just to interpret those feelings, because a lot of times what happens is when people are feeling anxious, that anxiety increases and they feel like it is going to increase until their head pops off.
Right.
Yes.
But what happens is eventually, if you, in psychology, we call it expose yourself, which sounds inappropriate, but I'm talking this psychological exposure, right? So if you keep exposing yourself, your stress level will plateau eventually, and it will decrease. This is how we treat phobias, other kinds of phobias. They used to call social anxiety social phobia. But I mean, for example, if someone is afraid of a spider, the way that they overcome that fear is not avoiding it, because when we avoid things, we actually strengthen our fear. But instead, it's to get closer to it, to experience that anxiety go up, plateau, and then go down. And as soon as it goes down, that's when you know that you have that control. So realizing that if you go to a party and immediately you leave, you actually are strengthening that anxiety.
Okay, that's a great
Wow.
point.
Right,
So you're
because
making it worse for the next
then
time,
you
the
didn't
next
do
time,
it
the
that
next time.
time.
Yeah.
No, and it starts
That's
building
that's great
Like
advice.
stick in there
You
gotta
gotta power
yourself.
through it.
Power through it so that you don't so that you're not multiplying the intensity of, oh my God, next time I couldn't do it last time and I couldn't do it the time before, so now I'm really not going to be able to do it. And I want to touch back into what you said we would get to later, and now it's later. What is it that you mean when you say it's us? It's our own feelings about ourselves that we're confronting when we're confronting our anxiety. Well, rather than it being other people are there to, we think it's other people that are judging us, but you said it's actually us.
We're judging ourselves.
Yes,
we're judging ourselves.
And how do we confront that reality? Because that's a really big. I know. That slaps me in the face when I hear that. Like, but there's a lot of people to blame for me not liking myself. So how do I wrap my head around that it's me?
So Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent."
Oh, whoa.
No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So what does that mean? That means that even if you say vicious, malicious, horrible things to me, it only hurts my feelings if part of me believes it. And I'm gonna give an example. So when I'm speaking on stage, sometimes I'll ask, what's something that you have complete confidence in, and especially when I'm in a group of women, no one says anything. So I say, okay, are you confident in your ability to walk? Right? Maybe not in 4-inch heels, maybe not after a couple glasses of wine, but are you confident in your ability to walk? Would you both say you're confident in your ability to walk?
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yes.
right? Now, if I said to you, you know what? You are a really bad walker. Would that hurt your feelings?
No, not necessarily. No.
And why is that? Because in your mind, there's no truth to
the walking was not something we doubted yesterday. And it's like, I can go, whatever. My walk's good. I'm good with my walk.
I'd be like, she's weird.
Why is she talking about my walk? All right.
Now I'm going to analyze every time I take a step.
Yeah.
But that's that notion of because we don't have that own fear or judgment within ourselves. When someone says it to us, there's a disconnect. It's not oh my gosh, they're right.
That's
oh my gosh, I am horrible.
Totally.
It's what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when someone says something, or when we think they're thinking something. In psychology, we call that mind reading, which happens a lot. We think we know what other people are thinking of us when they're judging us. That's really an indicator of something that we are struggling with ourselves. And the beauty is then we can address it ourselves. We can't change. Other people may have different opinions of us that aren't very positive, but we can change how we view ourselves and what we do with that information.
Well, I think I get trapped in it's the assumption of what other people are thinking based on not necessarily, it's a trigger point where I can come in thinking that somebody is saying something negative about me and that's not their intent, but because it triggers something in me that, and I'm learning about my triggers all through, the more I look at myself. Oh my goodness, this happened with Heather and me this week. Can I share this story?
I have
about
no
what
idea.
happened on the tennis court?
Sure.
So one of the
beat your ass?
She beat my ass. One of the practices that I put in, I really want to talk to our listeners about this too, because they do go hand in hand. When we think about the practices, we can really pull one out. It's not necessarily always the same practice, but one of the ones was I got very furious about how I was supposedly treated in an email for business. Okay, I thought I was being insulted. I thought they didn't understand me. They didn't get me. We were going to get on a phone call, and I was going to rip somebody a new one because they didn't understand me. Well, we happened to be on the tennis court, and I said, and here's where the practice comes in. Heather, hand me a tennis racket because I won't be able to have a very good conversation if I don't get this out of my system, right? So she starts whacking the ball all over the place. I'm like, I'm not a Dr. E's middle yet. And I really was like, I'm not. Just this is the way that I can do it. This is the way that I can do it. Can I calm down? And the fact of the matter is, we hit until I was able to get into a zone before we got on our conference call, and I was able to say, I am so furious, but now at least I can talk about it. And Heather said, the fact of the matter is, and now that we can talk, I can tell you that what you are interpreting and what you interpreted from that isn't actually
an attack on you.
It's not an attack. So can you,
Well, yeah, it was, you for whatever reason, you saw this email and the work product that was generated based on your input.
Right.
As them not understanding you and it being an incredible insult.
The impact outweighed the actual truth of what it was, but you recognize that in me because you know my pattern as a child.
Right. I mean, basically, you were taking offense to something that actually I didn't see as being offensive in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And so, in thinking about it, in your upbringing, and, you came from such abuse that you expect people to be abusing you in some way. And so you're constantly looking for it and you're finding it when it's not even there.
Well, I just assume that it's there. Like in the slightest word that doesn't, it goes into a place where in having this conversation, I was like, I don't even know I'm doing that. I didn't even know that I was creating the behavior where I was already fighting the thing that was a monster in front of me, that with calming down my body, I was able to take in like, wait a minute, they weren't trying to offend me, and they didn't think I was the stupidest person on earth, and we actually can be in business with them, and it was kind of meant to be a positive. That's the incredible thing, and I'm relating this to a social anxiety. This is like my business anxiety. I get in trouble because I put my personal in front of the business because I'm so afraid, and that's what we were able to change this week. It was amazing.
To be honest, it all comes from this place of insecurity, and for me, even when you would get upset by those things, I'm like, what am I missing? Clearly, there was something offensive there. I'm missing it. I must be an idiot that I don't see it. And
isn't that so interesting?
Right?
What was going on in both of your
right.
minds?
And then when I
Judging
stop
yourselves.
and we like step away from it before we react by hitting like that, and then I'm thinking, there is nothing there's no reason to be offended here. It's just the process that we're going through of creating something.
And without my just bulldozing forward without taking a minute or calming down or getting, and then I'm talking about this business red zone. I was really able to look and stop a behavior in a pattern, allow my friend to see me, but learn from the things that are practices of like, I don't even know what's going to happen on the other side, but this is something Dr. E said, and I am furious. So fuming me down, put out my fire, and then because of that, as a friend, recognize a pattern that is literally not there. It's something literally in my mind, and I feel like we're learning things through this, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. My understanding through Heather this week was really, I saw something. I see something very small as being very big. Can you talk about that a little bit, about these patterns that we form?
Absolutely. So we all have core beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about other people. And when we're in the green zone, so our core beliefs often are, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, the world isn't safe, people are mean, men are mean, these kind of generalizations. When we're in the green zone, we may think, I don't really believe that, right? But when we get in the red zone, it not only becomes a strong belief, but it becomes a filter through which you see the world. So in my new book, I was just editing it, and one of the examples I gave was, remember those old-fashioned slide projectors? Yes. So you have the light coming out, and then you put the slide in, and then you can see the picture.
Yes.
So the slide is very much these core beliefs. So if my core belief is I'm unworthy, then especially when in the red zone, I'm going to interpret other people's words, other people's actions, or what they don't say and don't do to support it's because I'm unworthy. He walked by me because I'm unworthy. He used that word because I'm unworthy.
Yes.
And so we literally see things differently, hear things differently, absorb things differently according to those core beliefs.
And is this potentially merged with social anxiety? As I'm if I'm at a party and I see people walk by me and now all of a sudden it's unworthy, so I'm like multiplying my anxiety by thinking I'm not worthy anyway?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. I'm unlovable. They're having a conversation. Why aren't they asking me to join? They must not like me. I'm not good enough. No one likes me. Right. Or really, they're just haven't seen each other for a while. Or they were thinking about coming over, but they think you're so great that they're afraid of coming to talk to you. I mean, there are so many reasons why people don't interact. And yet when we have these core beliefs about ourselves, we make assumptions. And the key is, the majority of the time we don't even realize we're making this stuff up. Yeah. It seems so real in our minds, which is exactly what was happening to you. You didn't stop and say, wait a minute, is this accurate and helpful thinking? It was so real in your mind. Well, right. and whoever does that, right? And unless hopefully, after we've spoken, hopefully we all will start to do that.
And that's what I'm saying. I think this is one of our go-to. This is one of my new things on the tool belt. Wait a minute. Is this actually accurate thinking? Is it actually accurate what I'm hearing and what I'm taking in? Or is it a part of my habits that don't allow me to see that I'm not taking in the truth?
Well, and it's also how you talk to yourself too. Like I could see giving yourself like a little pep talk before you go into a social event, being helpful. Like, you got this, you're fine. So and so and so and so here. You're gonna go, you're gonna get a drink, it's gonna be fine, and then you ease into it, because I think we all can be afraid of, what do we talk about? What do we say? Like, has it ever happened to you where you've gotten somebody's eye contact and then it becomes weird, and then you hold it for too long, and then you're like, oh no, is that
what happened with the Uber driver yesterday?
No, nobody. Like, look, I'll look at you right now, and it's like, and then you got to look away, and then it's like, no, nobody.
Well, I mean,
do you know what I mean? When you
absolutely,
and then all of a
Of
sudden,
course, yes,
and then all of a sudden
course.
it becomes awkward because you don't want to like look away. Now I'm going to create an anxiety.
No.
for somebody.
That's why one of our tips this week is have some subjects in your pocket that you want to talk about, so that you avoid that thing that makes you go, I'm joking. That person's looking at me. Of course, we've all had that. I was teasing you,
asshole.
And we're thinking, why aren't they coming over to talk to us?
Right.
But
Yes.
they're thinking the same thing.
Right.
They're thinking the same thing. Going back to that advice of find the person who's by themselves.
Right.
I will say another tool, if I could offer, and
Please
just
do.
one more.
Yes, please.
Is help out. If you're at a party,
That's a great. That's a great.
advice. grab a tray and serve some food. Go
Active
into
participation. Get into
Absolutely.
And if you're hosting a party, recognize maybe that person that's asking you to help might. Because the go-to is, oh no, I got it. But maybe recognize if somebody's asking you to help, they might need to help because they're having a little bit of anxiety, especially if it's somebody that doesn't know people at the party.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to be a good host is to also recognize that when somebody may not know somebody, to help them out and say, come sit here, or that's just.
Or have you met Sally?
Exactly.
Jimmy, have you met Sally?
Yeah.
Introducing other people when you're feeling anxious, even if you aren't the hostess, is also great too.
That's good. We've got some really, really wonderful tools this week. I'm thrilled. Is there something that you would like to leave our audience with? You gorgeous Dr. Woman.
I have one more thing I wanted to say. So
please do.
This is way before the pandemic. When we were looking and research at helping people overcome stage fright or giving a speech.
Okay.
And what we used to do as psychologists is we teach them how to take deep breaths and try to be very calm. And, that doesn't help when you're going on stage or even if you're going into a one-on-one conversation. What we found in the research is that when you reinterpret the heart racing, the sweaty palms from anxious, and so I'm going to mess up, to mean I'm excited. This is new, or it's new for me again. I'm excited, and reinterpret it as more excitement as opposed to anxiety. Yeah. That actually helps people feel better. And when audiences were watching, even if they didn't know which side they were on, the thinking, peaceful thoughts or reinterpreting, the audience rated those who reinterpreted that anxiety as being excitement as being better speakers. So even just in your mind, when you feel that those feelings, say to yourself, "Oh, I notice my heart's beating quickly. I'm excited because I haven't been to a party in a really long time." And so reinterpreting like that can be very powerful too.
So we really do have the choice about how we're going to interpret our feeling. I mean, we get to a fork in the road that says, here we are, we have some knowledge given to us. I have the power to look at this situation. Maybe I'm not going to take as big a deep breath as I could, but I'm going to take a moment to go, how am I going to behave with this experience that I'm feeling? And what's a word that can push me forward into the positive? And I have the choice I have the choice of what that word is, and that choice dictates my behavior. I'm either going to be excited about this, and I have the choice to do it, or I'm going to, screw it. I'm going to be the same person I always am. I'm scared out of my mind, and then you go out and you get scared out of your mind, and you don't speak as well.
I think it comes back to what we keep saying is just be nicer to yourselves, right? Just be nicer to yourselves. You're going to the party with you and yourself, or you're going to the event with you and just.
Well, not if we take our advice. We're going to go with a friend. And our friend can be nice to us. Well, everybody, watch out for yourselves and your friends. Be kind to yourself this week. Put some anxiety away for excitement about what is coming next. Whether you're getting on stage, whether you're going to a party, whether you're just going to dinner with a friend, be kind to each other. And
remember that there's more than 15 million other people that are experiencing
just like
what
us.
you're experiencing. And there's probably somebody at that event that you're at that's feeling the same way. So no, you're not alone, right?
Absolutely.
You are not alone. Thank you, Dr. E, for being with us this week. Until the next time, everybody live in loving kindness.
And don't be a dick.
Mwah.
And a big thanks to our Better Together team, Ryan Tillotson, Sebastian Alcala, Daniel Ferreira, and of course, Ann and Heather. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whatever device or platform you're listening to this on. And as always, see you next week.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.